Disgusting black creatures, get out of my sight.
What the fuck? Dude, this is a real game that Sega actually put out in 2005. That wasn't a dub, that's actually in the game Shadow the Hedgehog, which I've been replaying for the first time over the last week or so in anticipation for Sonic Frontiers next month. And I'm not gonna lie, despite the unintentional racism in the game and this,
I should never have been created. This is who I am.
Hey, don't go there yet.
I'm actually starting to enjoy the game, which is surprising because earlier this year I considered it one of the worst Sonic games. And the reason I disliked it so much were because of 3 levels in particular, being Central City, The Doom, and Lost Impact. All of which being maze-like stages that you can very easily get lost in, with 2 of those 3 levels' reasons for getting lost being so incredibly stupid. The reason Central City is so easy to get lost in is because in order to continue down the Dark mission for that level, which is the mission you will most likely be doing due to the level being only accessible by playing most if not all of the dark missions prior, having this wall, this inconspicuous wall that looks like any part of the level, having to be exploded with TNT in order to reveal a spring and continue the way forward. Now, to be fair, that TNT is right in front of that wall, but in the other maze level that you could very well play prior, that same TNT is meant to be picked up and thrown at cracked walls. So if you have that knowledge in mind going into the Central City level, you would think that you would have to pick up that TNT and bring it to a cracked wall in order to progress, not explode it right by its spawn point, something that does nothing in the other maze level, the Doom, which might actually have an even stupider reason for getting lost, being that the previous mentioned cracked walls TNT mechanic is not consistent. So normally, the only way to break these cracked walls is with the TNT. Shooting them with your gun doesn't do anything, and using any other type of attack on it does absolutely nothing. So when you see a cracked wall across these fans in this level, you would assume that you need to bring TNT over to that crack in order to open it. The problem is when you bring TNT over to that area, it's impossible to carry it across the fans. So you would naturally assume that you have to break that wall from the other side, as that is something you can actually do in another fan room in the level. But for some reason, for this fan room in particular, which is required to go through to beat any of the level's missions, you can't blow it up with TNT, and instead gun soldiers just break through the crack once you approach it, which completely goes against everything you were learning about that level up until that point, and you would only find out if you weren't paying attention to the level's gimmick and decided to go up to that crack, knowing full well you have no means to supposedly break through it, which is actually the case for the other fan room, which you might have encountered before the mandatory one that doesn't require the TNT, which creates 2 problems with the level, one being the inconsistency with the crack, and 2, the fact that there's rooms that look identical to each other, which makes it even harder to navigate, especially considering that you don't have a map for these levels. And that is also an issue in the similar looking but different level Lost Impact, which has the same maze structure, but luckily without the cracked wall stuff. These 3 levels are why I hated the game Shadow the Hedgehog, and I think for good reason. As replaying those levels today, I still feel the same way about them that I did back when I first played this game. But what got me to appreciate the game more was playing all of the other levels in the game. I guess when I initially played this game, I played it like any normal Sonic game, trying to run through it as if it was a Sonic Heroes level or a Sonic Adventure 2 level, while also trying to pay attention to the very disjointed story, which caused me to not enjoy the game as much because I was consistently confused by the narrative, caused me to not really utilize the gun system, as you can still homing attack and spin dash in this game, which is how you usually take enemies out in previous Sonic games, so I just adopted that playstyle into this game, which not only caused me to skip a crucial mechanic of this game, which is the gunplay, but also caused me to speed through the levels, often causing me to miss the objectives that were required of me in order to complete the hero or dark missions, which is something you're gonna want to do unless you just want to play this game for an hour, go down the neutral path and be done with it, only experiencing about a quarter of the game's overall levels. And this instinctual, playing every Sonic game like Sonic Adventure 2 type mindset is also why I didn't enjoy Sonic Lost World on my initial playthrough of it. But earlier this year, I went back to it and did a challenge on stream where I played the game without using the run button, and surprisingly, playing the game that way helped me appreciate the game more by playing it through a way that the game was designed for, rather than the way I played previous Sonic games. So when I went into my new playthrough of Shadow the Hedgehog, I adopted that main mindset by not trying to speed through the levels, taking my time, exploring, combing the areas, and using the guns to my advantage in order to bust down enemies. And the result of this caused me to enjoy the game to a level that I never thought I could. It changed Shadow the Hedgehog from one of my top 10 least favorite Sonic games into one of my top 10 most favorite Sonic games. Now, there's still a lot of issues with the game. I would prefer the spin dash to work more like Sonic Adventure 2. I think the boss fights could have been much better, and the game could have had a wider variety of bosses, as many of them are reused. The killing enemy mission requirement should have 100% been lowered in a lot of levels, especially the 3 levels of Doom in this game: Central City, Lost Impact, and the Doom. In fact, those levels should have been completely reworked into being something different, or at least having a map that you can use, as I still find some utility and enjoyment in the maze-like natures of Central City and the Doom, because despite being flawed in many ways, I think having different pathways for the hero, dark, and neutral missions are really cool. I think it's actually something done better in my favorite level of the game, Lava Shelter, by having alternate paths for the hero and dark missions. I think if these 3 maze levels were reconstructed in a way to be less of a maze, but more of a branching paths type level, where at some points in the level, some of the paths intersect, causing the level to be familiar yet fresh on every playthrough, those levels would be much more bearable, maybe even fun, and the game would be much better for it. Central City kind of does that well, with the first half being unique for hero and dark respectively, but the latter half merging into the same endpoint. The only really big problem with that level, to be honest, is the wall destruction part at the beginning and in the middle of the level. Honestly, if they just removed that whole destroying wall gimmick and just had the wall already destroyed from the get-go, the level would be 10 times better, and it wouldn't even be weird either, since the premise of the level is the aliens attacking the city, so it would make sense for parts of it to be broken. Also, there's other weird issues with this game that makes me question how much this game was really playtested. Like, for example, how slow the elevator is in the Doom level. I mean, just look at how long I have to wait for this platform. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially when you're going for the A rank of the mission, which requires you to do it fast. There's also other parts of the game where you die in places you really shouldn't, like this part in Space Gadget where it always launches you to the right, making it very likely for you to just fall off the stage, and stuff like waiting around for falling platforms and Cosmic Fall, and other various little problems like that that are scattered throughout the game. But those problems aside, and the story aside, which I know is a lot of problems, this game is legitimately great. And with more development time to iron all of that out, this game really could have been something special. Realizing stuff like this just makes me wish there was more 3D Sonic game remakes, because I feel almost every early 3D Sonic game could really benefit from one. Even the games that I consider good, like Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic Heroes, could all benefit drastically from more development time and a new modern coat of paint. 3D Sonic game remakes have already been proven to be amazing and add so much value to the old games through Chaos X's fan remake of Sonic 06. If you haven't checked that out, seriously do. He's only completed the Shadow and Sonic levels so far, but he has completely remade that game from the ground up and fixed so many minor problems that the original had that it almost feels like playing a completely different game, yet the same game that Sega meant to make all those years ago. It's like when you have really dirty patio furniture and you can barely make out any of its design, but then when you power wash it, it's the same thing but completely transformed into what it was meant to be. And I would love to see the same treatment done either by a fan or by Sega themselves for Shadow the Hedgehog, because I honestly think this game deserves it. I know it's weird to see a hedgehog with a gun, and the game is pretty much a meme, but there is something endearing by having such an edgy cartoon protagonist wielding a gun and mowing down aliens and robots. It's just pure fun. Maybe a bit cringe considering the series' origins, but if this game had more development time, it could have been remembered as this cool, more dark-themed Sonic spin-off. kind of like how the Ratchet and Clank games are fondly remembered despite being edgy cartoon platformers. And for those of you who still hate this game and think I'm being too lenient on its flaws, let it be known that the flaws I talked about in this video are very, very big flaws that do prevent it from being an overall good game, and nothing exemplifies that more than this 10 times sped up footage of me trying to get an A rank in the dark mission of the Doom. So as you watch this footage of me suffering through the game, I'd like you to go down to the comment section and give me your thoughts on this game. I'm curious to see how much people hate it or love it, as despite this being one of the most hated Sonic games, I do occasionally see some love for it, and it's not as hated as some of the worst games out there like Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. I've even heard some people say this is their favorite Sonic game, so whatever your opinion of this game is, I would love to hear it, as I'm sure it's unique from most other opinions that are going to be posted, as there's not a complete consensus on whether this is one of the most horrendous Sonic games or an okay one. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of this footage.